All right, guys, let's do a video on how to get rich and how to follow the money. In this video, we're going to cover Bitcoin, of course. We're going to cover Warren Buffett since he retired. We're even going to cover Apple, and we're going to cover YouTube content that makes billions of dollars. I figured out how to do it later, and right now it's too late, but you can take the same formula and apply it to something you know a lot about. So let's dive into this. We're also going to cover China, because China is a huge issue. So how do you follow the money when you don't even see the money? Remember the pizza guy that bought spent 1,000 Bitcoin or something on 2 pizzas, Domino's pizzas or something, or who was it, Uncle something pizzas? If he followed the money, if he saw where the money was going, he would not have spent that 1,000, I think it was like 1,200 Bitcoin or something stupid, or 2,000 Bitcoin. Something stupid like that. He wouldn't have done it. So how do I follow something I can't see? Let's get into that in this episode. You're going to be able to take these lessons and apply it. And since AI, robotics, and AI agents, full AI UI agents, computer self-manipulating, browser manipulating, app program manipulating agents are just right around the corner, you might be able to take all these secret techniques that the rich use and be able to make millions of dollars before it's too late and everyone has to stand in soup lines. That is the race right now. So let's get into it with the first example, baby meth. I just saw this guy that wears, he wears like a propeller cap or something, and then he wears orange suspenders, and he's just not a good looking guy, but he wears bright clothes and does children's videos on YouTube, and he's worth like $1.2 billion. He's a billionaire. He's literally a billionaire. No, maybe he's not a billionaire, but he makes billions of dollars. How does he do it? He does it by producing YouTube content for babies. And you think, that's really silly, unless you actually have babies. I don't have babies, so that didn't make any sense to me. That literally made no... How do you make so much money when babies can't consume any money? They don't consume anything. They can't spend any money. They don't have a credit card. They don't even have a PayPal account. How can you make that much money? And you parents know. The reason why you make so much money producing baby content is because babies don't skip ads, number one. And number two, parents get exhausted entertaining and caring for and watching their babies. But if you turn on his content, suddenly babies just go zone out. They just go, It's baby meth. It's like mental drugs for babies. They just turn on the content and they zone out. They stop crying. They stop yelling. They stop throwing things and tantrums. And it gives parents a break. Okay, so what just happened there? How does he make all this money? He found a way to game the advertiser revenue, number one. And number two, he found a hidden pain point that no one really even noticed. I just want my baby to just shut up. I love my baby, a super beautiful baby, but please, I need a break. He found a way to give babies their heroin. Or opium. Religion is the opium of the masses. Well, this YouTube channel is the opium of babies. You put those two things together and now you make $1 billion. Got that? Let's move on to the next idea. And you're going to start seeing these patterns where there's multiple different angles and dimensions of leverage that are applied simultaneously that create millions of dollars. Next, BTC Xi 2013. What does that mean? Yeah, see this top screen? Xi and Bitcoin both made huge dents in the universe in 2013. In 2013, Bitcoin was worth $13. Xi Jinping took office and it became worth $1,300 for a clean, what is that? 9,000%. 90x gain in 1 year, a little over a year and a half. It did. But why was that? No, what does Xi Jinping see? People underestimate China. Never underestimate China. The moment you underestimate China, you don't see where the I don't see where my finger's going. Where the money's going. If you don't see where the money's going, how are you going to follow it? So you got to follow China. Okay? This is what happened. This is what you missed that I didn't miss, but I was stupid enough to sell all my Bitcoin and lose it all in a boating accident. I hate boats. Such a waste of money. You can't follow the money unless you can see the money. And to see the money, you have to Xi Jinping the money. Anyway, that's a stupid thing to say. But hopefully it helps you remember. Xi Jinping, when he took office, there was this other guy in office that kind of carried on the Mao Zedong philosophy, Mao Zedong Chinese culture, which was very similar to the Pajit culture. Briberies, corruption, nepotism, all this stuff was super, super strong in China before Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping takes over, and this is just after, who was it? Was it Clinton? I think it was Clinton, or was it Reagan, that took China and put them in the World Trade Organization. They said, hey, we just figured out that if you have factories in America, now tying back to Trump and tariffs and factories and manufacturing in America, if we have factories in America, we have pollution in America. We don't want that. We just want wealth and abundance and great new products without having pollution or working too hard. We want to make a slave class. Let's do it in China. They're smart. They pick things up quick. Let's throw them in the World Trade Organization. So the U.S. decides, I think it was Reagan, or was it Clinton, that decided these guys have to be a part of our organization. So let's just give them a bunch of dollars, which is why the United States dollar became such a strong reserve currency, because everyone had to use it to trade goods across the ocean. After about a decade or two of this, what ends up happening is that all the lieutenants and generals in the government, all the people in mid and high level positions in government, they were able to predict where all the factories were going to go. They were able to predict, not just predict, they decided where all the freeways, all the subways, all the trains, all the airports, everything, the schooling, everything was going to go. And so what they did is they just bought the land in advance from poor farmers, and then they sold the land to Americans. I'm not kidding you. This is exactly how Coca-Cola built their factories in China, how Nike built their factories, how Apple built their factories in China. They made deals with mayors and governors of provinces and mid-level and high-level government officials and just gave them millions of dollars. Are you starting to see how Bitcoin ties in? If you had followed the money, if you had seen where the money was going from the Reagan era, Clinton era, I think. I should have looked this up. To China, you would have said, wait a second. All these mid-level, through bribery and corruption, mid and high-level government officials are making money since the induction into the World Trade Organization. Xi Jinping wants to legitimize China. So isn't he going to put an end to the corruption? Bitcoin, 100x and 98x or something. 9,800% in 1 year. In 2013. Why? Because Xi Jinping said, hey, you used to be the governor of this province. You used to be the mayor of this town. You used to be the Secretary of Commerce and Transportation under the last president's administration. I'm going to kill you. You're literally not just you're going to skip jail and go straight to torture and firing squad because you misappropriated millions of American dollars instead of making that money go to the Chinese people, which would have made China strong as a nation, which would have made China look legitimate in the eyes of the UN. You made China look like a back-dealing, corrupt, nepotistic, just backwards Pajit country. And so what did all these rich people who were high-level government and mid-level government do? They bought Bitcoin, which is what made it almost 100x in 2013. Don't you wish you could have followed that money? I would have held that Bitcoin and not sold it. I knew about this, but I didn't know it was that serious. And I was too young to understand macroeconomics and politics and global trade and the World Trade Organization issues and Chinese corruption and Chinese... Anyway, had you known, you would have been able to hold Bitcoin and said, I bet you they're going to take this Bitcoin, and when they finally arrive in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Irvine, California, in Milan, in Stockholm, when all these corrupt officials evade the firing squad and settle down and buy huge, beautiful houses and start laundries, Chinese laundromats, as a cover, as a money laundering cover, I bet you that's when the price of Bitcoin's going to dump. You would have known. Had you understood the big picture. And that's why Bitcoin 100x'd and then lost about 80% of its value from here to here. It went from $1,300 to $300. Lost 70% of its value. 2014, the very next year, is when you started seeing tons of Chinese people in Vancouver, in Irvine, in San Francisco, in New York City, in Seoul, and Milan, and Stockholm. You see how that works? Which, by the way, is why all the Chinese in American schools are so smart, because they're the descendants of the upper class. They're the children of the, albeit corrupt, smartest, most powerful elite of Chinese leadership that defected and had to expatriate their money from China into America to be able to avoid the firing squad from Xi Jinping. You see why it's this important? Why it's so important to be able to follow the money? You have to be able to see the money to follow it. That's why Bitcoin pumped. What about the second time Bitcoin pumped? What about the third time? Exactly the same thing. How did they do it? You remember those transactions? You remember those Sure, they came to America and they sold their Bitcoin. They came to Canada and sold their Bitcoin, yes. But you remember those transactions where one Bitcoin transaction ended up costing, what, $500,000 or something in Bitcoin. What these Chinese people did, so that it didn't look like they were taking the money and just selling it, trying to, obviously you can't take more than $10,000 worth of RMB off China's mainland and relocate it to the USA or North America or even Argentina. So what they did was they made deals with miners and said, hey, when you see my transaction go through for this amount of Bitcoin, I want you to charge me $500,000, charge me $1 million for this transaction, hold the money, and then when I get to Vancouver, wire it to, what's a bank in Vancouver? Wire it to my bank in Vancouver. That's how they did this. They made deals with the miners. So now you know why Bitcoin price went up and down and up and down and up and down. What's next on the agenda? Warren Buffett. How did Warren Buffett make so much money? Again, when you see how Warren Buffett made so much money, you'll be able to take the same secrets that he used, apply it to your own life in something you're really good at, something you already have expertise in, and hopefully make hundreds of millions of dollars fast enough to where you can get out of the system before agentic AI and robots make everyone have to stand in soup lines. Warren Buffett said, Tim Cook has made me more money than I made for myself. Did you know that? Everyone is saying Warren Buffett is the best investor. Warren Buffett is the Oracle of Omaha. He's the wizard of money and stocks and trade. No. Warren Buffett himself said Tim Cook made him more money. But why not Steve Jobs? Interesting, isn't it? Why not Steve? Why did he say Tim Cook? We all know that Tim Cook did nothing for Apple. Tim Cook did nothing. The iPhone hasn't changed since Steve Jobs died. I mean, what's he released since Steve Jobs died? Earphones? I mean, what else has he released? He hasn't done anything for Apple. And yet Warren Buffett says Tim Cook made him more money than he made for himself. What does that mean? I decided to check. So I did in TradingView, you can do APPLBRK or divided by BRK, and you can see the comparison between how much money Apple made versus how much money Berkshire Hathaway made. Did you know that each share of Berkshire Hathaway AA costs almost $1 million? It's like $825,000 before this dip, before he announced that he was going to die or retire. Almost $1 million per share for the last like 30 or 40 years. People that, there's a saying that if you want to see a bunch of rich people, go to a Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. You'll see the richest rich guys. But then Warren Buffett himself said Tim Cook made him more money than he himself made for himself. So I decided to check Apple versus Berkshire Hathaway. Apple versus Berkshire Hathaway looks like this. It's right. Actually, it's not here anywhere. It's nowhere, is it? Okay, doesn't matter. It makes Berkshire Hathaway look like a rug pull meme coin. Apple went up so much farther, so much faster, so much more than Berkshire Hathaway. All those rich guys at Berkshire Hathaway annual meetings are nothing compared to guys that are just holding Apple stock for the last 30 years. How much more money you did? Do the calculations yourself. If I had bought $1,000 worth of Apple stock 20 years ago versus $1,000 worth of Berkshire Hathaway stock 20 years ago, you would have made like 10 times more money just holding Apple. Maybe not 10 times, but a lot more money just holding Apple. So what the heck? How is that even possible when Apple hasn't innovated for the last 10, 20 years? Literally since Steve Jobs died, Apple hasn't done anything. The answer to that is also the same answer to how you can become a multimillionaire or make hundreds of millions of dollars. Why is Apple stock continuously going up even more than Berkshire Hathaway stock, even though it's doing nothing? In fact, before I get to the next slide, they lost money the last 3 years. In fact, over the last 10 years, half of the years were losing years. And was it this year? This year, the only reason they made any money at all is because they bought shares of something else. They bought some other shares. Apple itself didn't make any money. It's just that their net holdings appreciated or something. They added that to their bottom line on their annual reports. That's it on their plus and minuses. That's it. So why is the stock still going up? Tax trust. That's why. Oh, what does that even mean? Is that the last slide? Yeah, it's the last slide. What does that even mean? Rich people. You know how they stay rich? They buy stocks and then they borrow against the equity in the stocks. That's it. They don't sell their stocks to buy something. They buy stocks and they borrow money against the equity, but they don't even do it for themselves. They actually build a trust. This thing. They get an attorney to create a trust for them that buys all the stocks for them. And what ends up happening is when they put their money inside the trust, they don't get taxed on that. Normally, when you spend any money, you get taxed on the money that you spend. But let's say you sell a house and then that money goes entirely into your trust. You don't pay taxes on that. Then, when that trust has stocks that you're holding that increase double, triple, quadruple in value, you don't pay taxes on that. The trust is the one that's liable for the taxes, but the trust has private jets to pay for. The trust has buildings to pay for. The trust has Rolls Royces and Ferraris and Lambos to pay for. So everything's written off, and yachts and fancy parties that are actually just marketing deductions. They're not parties, they're marketing deductions. Best of all, in a trust, when you die, estate taxes, no estate taxes, because the trust didn't die, you died. So what ends up happening is your dad ends up giving you the entire trust money, which is why they call it a trust fund. It gives you all that trust money and you become the principal of that trust. And you do the same thing for your own child. So for 3 generations, 4 generations in a row, now you're starting to see the picture. Each generation is only about 25 years long. Apple has been around since 1980s, really just pumping since 1980s. 80s to 2000 to 2025, that's about 2 generations worth of pumping. Are you starting to see what I'm saying? The reason why Apple stock did so much better than even Berkshire Hathaway stock and Tim didn't do any innovating is because it's the same thing with McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't make money selling burgers. McDonald's makes money through real estate. Getting into real estate early in new development communities that allow their net worth, their value of their corporation to start skyrocketing along with the development. The guy producing YouTube videos for babies isn't getting rich because babies are buying stuff from him from sponsors. He's getting rich because babies don't click skip ad. He's getting rich because parents want the babies to keep watching and the babies want to keep watching. Bitcoin made people rich by a factor of 100x in 1 year because the Chinese, the corrupt Chinese, had to take their money out of. Are you starting to see the pattern here? There's always something going on behind the scenes that you're not seeing. And if you were able to see it, you'd be able to follow the money, but you can't follow the money because you can't see the money. And now you understand why miners charge some people $500,000. They have backdoor deals. And so what's going to happen to the stock market and Apple and all that if rich people continue to buy? Oh, and one more thing about this tax trust and Apple. Why did Apple become the go-to stock for family trusts, family wealth management offices? It's because they didn't do what Microsoft did. Microsoft used to, remember how sucky Microsoft software was? And yet it kept on going up and it's still really going up. Same with Amazon. Apple became the torch holder for clean, minimalistic, futuristic design and lifestyle. It became a lifestyle brand. Apple literally became a lifestyle brand. So rich people are like, yeah, I'm proud to say that 70% of my holdings is in Apple. Tell someone at a bar, a hot 26-year-old bikini model at a bar, yeah, most of my wealth is in Microsoft. That sounds stupid, right? Tell her that iPhone that you're holding, I'm one of the owners. It makes, you see how that Excel spreadsheet that you use, I'm one of the owners of Microsoft. You see how that works? So to make real money, you don't make real money by flipping burgers. That's just an excuse. You don't make real money by trying to trade Bitcoin without understanding how Xi Jinping is going to behead and firing squad all the previous cabinet members. You don't make money without realizing why baby YouTubers are billionaires. There's always something behind the scenes. There are multiple dimensions and there are big hidden drivers. And all you have to do is trigger 1 or 2 of those hidden drivers and you can end up on my whiteboard as well. Follow me and ask questions at OTC underscore Bitcoin on Twitter.